Sad news has taken the internet by storm. Fans are in shock as reality TV star Kandi Burruss has reportedly kicked her 17-year-old daughter, Riley, out of the house. The headlines alone have left people stunned, but the real question lingering in everyone's mind is, what could have driven a mother and daughter, once inseparable, to such a heartbreaking breaking point? For years, Kandi and Riley were seen as a shining example of a close mother-daughter bond, a proud mom guiding her intelligent, ambitious child toward success. Their moments together, shared on Instagram, red carpets, and family-centered TV scenes, painted the perfect picture. But perfection can be an illusion, and behind the bright smiles and matching outfits, something had been quietly fracturing. A slow, silent unraveling that no one outside their inner circle could see. It began on what seemed like an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The Atlanta sun spilled golden light across the Burruss home, its marble floors gleaming like a scene from a lifestyle magazine. Riley was upstairs, headphones on, curating music for her next vlog, a creative escape she often turned to when she needed peace. She had plans to film content later, just another day in her digital world. But downstairs, the atmosphere was heavier. Kandi's voice, at first low and restrained, drifted from the kitchen. She was on the phone, pacing slowly, her tone clipped and tense, the kind of tension Riley had been sensing for weeks but trying to ignore. Their recent disagreements had been about everything and nothing: school, chores, Riley's future, and the growing weight of expectations that came with her last name. But this time, it felt different. When Kandi hung up the phone, she didn't call Riley down. Instead, she climbed the stairs herself. Riley saw it the second her mother entered the room. The pressed lips, the eyes filled with a potent mix of disappointment and frustration. It wasn't going to be a gentle talk. "You need to start thinking about your future," Kandi began, her voice calm but firm, like she had rehearsed this in her head. "And right now, I don't think you're taking that seriously." Riley tried to defend herself, explaining the stress of senior year, the pressure of living up to the Kandi Burruss daughter label, the way it sometimes felt like every move she made was being judged. But Kandi, her patience worn thin, interrupted again and again, each remark sharper than the last. The air in the room thickened. Riley's voice trembled when she said, "I'm trying, Mom. You just don't see it." "Trying isn't enough anymore," Kandi shot back. "You need to step up. You're 17. You can't just sit here like life is one big vacation." Those words landed like a punch. Riley looked around at her room, the posters of her favorite artists, the photos with friends, the camera and makeup corner where she'd spent countless hours creating. This had always been her sanctuary, her safe space. But now, she felt it slipping away, the warmth replaced by a chilling uncertainty. And for the first time, she wondered if by nightfall, this room would no longer be hers. The tension snapped like a brittle thread, releasing everything they had both been holding back for months, maybe years. Kandi's voice climbed first, sharp and cutting, and Riley's followed, her words spilling out like water from a burst dam. They spoke over each other, neither listening, both desperate to be heard. Every tiny grievance, every moment of feeling misunderstood, every unspoken resentment came rushing to the surface in a chaotic torrent neither of them could control. Riley's chest felt tight, her breathing shallow, her fingers trembling at her sides. But even through the rising panic, she couldn't stop. She had to defend herself, to fight for her choices, for her independence, for the small slice of life that felt like hers. And then Kandi said it. "If you can't live under my rules, then maybe you shouldn't live under my roof." The words were cold and unflinching, like a door slamming shut in the middle of winter. Riley froze. She searched her mother's face for a hint of regret, for some sign that the sentence had slipped out in anger and could be reeled back in. But Kandi's stance was rigid, her arms crossed like a wall, her eyes locked and unmoving. The silence that followed was suffocating, pressing into Riley's ears until she could hear nothing but the pounding of her own heartbeat. "Are you telling me to leave?" she asked finally, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. Kandi didn't answer with words. She gave a single, deliberate nod. Something inside Riley fractured. The shock blurred her vision, not with tears, not yet, but with the dizzying realization that this wasn't just an argument anymore. This was real. And irreversible. Without another word, she turned toward her closet, the sound of her suitcase wheels scraping against the hardwood floor marking the beginning of an ending she never thought she'd face. She unzipped it slowly, the metallic rasp slicing through the heavy quiet. Every shirt she folded carried a memory: birthdays, road trips, holidays, nights filled with laughter that now felt like they belonged to strangers. She picked up a hoodie she had borrowed from her mom years ago, the fabric soft from hundreds of washes. For a moment, she held it close, her mind flickering through flashes of a happier time. Then she set it aside. Her phone buzzed, a message from her best friend. "Are you coming to the shoot later?" Riley stared at it for a long moment, the words feeling like they came from another world. She turned the phone face down on the bed. Outside her window, the sky was still bright, cars still moved down the street. Life went on as if nothing had shifted. But for her, everything had tilted. Downstairs, Kandi sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up. The low hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. Riley gripped the handle of her suitcase and walked past her, each step heavier than the last. She stopped at the front door, hand resting on the knob, her back to her mother. For a heartbeat, she waited. For an apology. For her name, spoken softly. For anything. It never came. She opened the door and stepped out, the quiet click of it closing behind her sounding more final than a slam. She stepped outside, the suitcase handle clutched in her hand. The sunlight felt different now, harsher, almost mocking, as if the same sky that had shone over birthday parties and summer barbecues was now casting light on her lowest moment. The air was warm, but it did nothing to thaw the cold sitting heavy in her chest. Her feet moved on instinct toward the street, though she had no destination in mind. She only knew she couldn't turn back, not now, not after that silence at the door. For now, the world was still blissfully unaware. The news hadn't broken yet. No blogs. No gossip accounts. No flood of comments from people who thought they knew her story. But it was only a matter of time. And when it hit, everyone would have something to say. Some would pick sides, others would speculate, but none of them would truly understand what it felt like to be 17, standing on the sidewalk outside your own home, realizing that one conversation had redrawn the map of your life. Life in the Burruss household had always been different. It wasn't bad, just public. Privacy was a rare currency, and image was everything. Outsiders saw the polished moments, the coordinated family outfits at premieres, the warm smiles for magazine covers, the Instagram posts that looked like pure joy. What they didn't see were the small gaps between those moments, the quiet breakfasts eaten alone while Kandi was already at a meeting, the late nights when she came home too tired to talk, the invisible space between them that had grown wider without either of them saying why. It wasn't neglect, not in the way people might assume, but it was absence. And absence, Riley had learned, could feel just as sharp as anger. The past few months had only deepened the divide. It started small, skipping a family dinner to hang with friends, rolling her eyes when Kandi reminded her to watch what she posted online. Little things, harmless in isolation, but each one leaving a mark. Over time, the marks layered on top of each other until they formed walls neither of them seemed willing to climb. One April night stuck in Riley's memory like a thorn. Kandi had come home close to 1 a.m. to find her still at her desk, the room lit only by the glow of her laptop screen. Music hummed faintly through her headphones as she edited a vlog. "Riley, do you have any idea what time it is?" Kandi's voice carried an edge, not shouting, but cutting all the same. "I'm working, Mom." "This is important," Riley replied, her tone defensive before she even realized it. "What's important is school. Sleep. This YouTube thing can wait." The argument ended with Riley slamming her laptop shut, muttering something she didn't mean. Neither of them apologized. The air between them after that night never fully cleared. And then there was the weight of the internet. Riley's following was growing, and with it came strangers' opinions, some supportive, others cruel. People compared her to her mother, dissected her appearance, her choices, her talent. She tried to pretend she didn't care, but some comments stuck to her ribs like burrs, refusing to let go. Kandi told her to ignore them, to grow thicker skin. But to Riley, it wasn't that simple. The constant judgment felt like a shadow she could never step out of. Her friends noticed the change before she admitted it to herself. She laughed less. She answered group chats with emojis instead of words. At lunch, she scrolled through her phone, avoiding conversation. When people asked if something was wrong, she'd shrug and say she was tired. But the truth was simple, and it was painful. Home no longer felt like home. It felt like a place where she was on trial every time she walked through the door. The week before it all happened, there had been another argument, this one about money. Riley had been saving for a trip with friends, a plan she thought had Kandi's quiet blessing. But when the topic came up again, Kandi started asking pointed questions about expenses, about responsibility, about whether Riley was truly ready to handle herself. The word stung. "You don't trust me," Riley said that night, her voice tight. I'm just trying to make sure you're ready for the real world, Kandi replied, her tone calm but immovable. Neither side budged. By Sunday, their home felt colder, not in temperature, but in spirit. Even the smallest interactions had weight. Riley would come downstairs for breakfast and feel Kandi's brief glance over the top of her phone, a glance that seemed to measure her without speaking. They shared the same roof but lived in different worlds, and in the silence between them, the tension roared louder than any fight. The night before everything changed, Riley lay in bed scrolling through her phone, not really watching the videos in front of her. Down the hall, she could hear her mother's voice from the kitchen, low, quick, talking to someone about schedules and commitments. Riley thought, briefly, about walking down to say goodnight. But something inside her hesitated. Lately, it felt safer to keep her distance. She didn't know that by the next day, that distance would become permanent. It started as a conversation that could have gone either way. The late afternoon sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, painting the countertops in gold. But the air between them was anything but warm. Riley padded in wearing an oversized hoodie, hair pulled into a loose bun, expecting maybe a casual hi or a comment about dinner. Instead, she found her mother's gaze fixed on her, steady, deliberate, almost like she'd been waiting. "We need to talk," Kandi said, her voice low but firm. Riley froze, one hand still on the fridge door. "About what?" "About everything," her mother replied. "Your attitude. Your priorities. Your future. I can't keep watching you drift like this." The fridge door shut with a slow, hollow thud. "Drift? I'm not drifting," Riley said, turning to face her. "I'm figuring things out. You act like I'm doing nothing." Kandi's expression hardened. "Riley, you're 17. This is the time to be working, planning, preparing, not wasting your days. Do you know how many opportunities I've worked for to give you this life? And you're just..." "I'm just what?" Riley cut in, her voice sharp. "Living my life? Not becoming exactly what you want me to be? You think because I'm not following your blueprint that I'm failing?" The space between them tightened like a rope stretched too far. "Don't twist this into something it's not," Kandi snapped. "I'm trying to prepare you for reality. You think this little social media thing is enough to survive on? You think people will take care of you out there?" Riley stepped forward, her hands trembling, but her voice steadying with every word. "And you think yelling at me is preparing me for the world? You're not even listening to me. I'm not you, Mum. I'm not trying to be you." That last sentence landed like a stone dropped in deep water, silent at first, but sinking fast. Kandi's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing, the air between them electric. "Then maybe you should start figuring out who you are, somewhere else." The words landed like a slap. Riley blinked, unsure she'd heard them right. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," Kandi replied, her voice flat and unwavering, "if you can't respect my rules, you can't live under my roof." The kitchen went still, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. Riley's throat tightened, each breath shaky and uneven. "So that's it? You're just kicking me out?" Kandi didn't blink. "I'm giving you a chance to take responsibility for yourself. You think you're ready to be an adult? Then be one." Riley let out a short, bitter laugh, the kind that tastes like metal in the mouth. "You think this is going to make me stronger? It's just going to make me hate you." For a flicker of a moment, something shifted in Kandi's eyes, a shadow of hesitation, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She turned away, reaching for her phone on the counter, her body language screaming that the conversation was over. And that was the part that stung most, not the sharp words, not the anger, but the quiet, casual dismissal. Riley brushed past her, their shoulders touching for just a second, before heading for the stairs. Her footsteps were heavy, each creak of the wood loud in the tense silence. In her room, she yanked open her closet and pulled out the suitcase she'd only ever used for vacations. It felt heavier than it had any right to, even before a single item was inside. Clothes went in without much thought: jeans, hoodies, t-shirts. Her makeup kit, her charger, her favorite hoodie from freshman year. She grabbed a framed photo from her nightstand, her and her mom at a theme park, grinning with ice cream in hand, and stared at it for a moment. Then she set it face down on the bed. Her hands moved quickly, but her thoughts were spiraling. Where am I going? Who can I call? She could already hear the whispers that would follow, classmates pretending to be concerned, online trolls making jokes, gossip blogs twisting the story until it barely resembled the truth. Downstairs, Kandi's movements echoed faintly, the sound of a cupboard closing, footsteps across the living room. The air between them was no longer just tense, it was thick, suffocating. Riley zipped the suitcase, slung her backpack over one shoulder, and took a deep breath. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't look back. The stairs groaned under her weight as she descended, eyes fixed on the front door. Kandi didn't stop her, didn't call her name, didn't even ask where she was going. Riley turned the knob and stepped outside, late sunlight spilling over her face like a spotlight she didn't want. The street was still, but inside her, everything was chaos. No plan. No destination. Just the knowledge that her home was no longer hers, and that truth was louder than any argument they'd ever had. The first thing she noticed once the door shut behind her was the silence. No hum of the fridge, no faint phone call from the kitchen, no muffled footsteps overhead. Just birds somewhere in the distance, and the low growl of a passing car. Her suitcase rattled over the uneven sidewalk, wheels clattering against the cracks, each bump a reminder that she was moving further and further from the only place she had ever called home. She didn't have a destination in mind. The sidewalk stretched ahead like an endless question she couldn't answer. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her back into the present. It was Maya. "Where are you? Are you okay?" Riley stared at the screen for a long moment before typing, "Can I come over?" The reply was almost instant, "Of course. I'll tell my mom." It was a 20-minute walk to Maya's, but it felt longer. Every step seemed to pull the argument back into her head, the sharp edge of her mother's voice, the finality in her words, the way she didn't even try to stop her from leaving. Each memory twisted in her stomach until it knotted tight. She thought she might cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Not yet. When she reached Maya's house, the front door swung open before she could knock. Maya's eyes widened at the sight of the suitcase. "Oh my God, what happened?" she asked, pulling Riley into a hug. The scent of Maya's vanilla shampoo hit Riley all at once, warm and familiar. She held on a second longer than she meant to, long enough to realize how unmoored she felt. Inside, Maya's mom didn't pry. She offered food, pointed her toward the guest room, and left her to breathe. Riley set the suitcase down by the bed and sat at its edge, staring at her hands. Everything felt temporary, the unfamiliar sheets, the framed family photos that had nothing to do with her, the faint hum of a TV in another room. That night, sleep didn't come. She lay on her back, scrolling her phone in the dark, her thumb moving without thought. Should she post something? Say something? Anything? Her DMs were already filling with friends. "Where are you? Are you okay?" She didn't know how to answer. Then she saw it, an Instagram gossip page. Rumor, tension between Kandi Burruss and daughter Riley?
The photo was old, a smiling red carpet shot, but the caption claimed sources hinted at drama. Riley's stomach flipped. She could already hear the online chorus, some calling her spoiled, others accusing Kandi of being cold. Neither felt true. Neither felt like her story. By morning, the whispers had sharpened into chatter. A fan account tweeted, "Why is Riley posting from someone else's house? Eyes." The replies were a tangle of curiosity, judgment, and faux concern. Riley's chest tightened. She closed the app. Then came her mother's post. An Instagram story not naming her, not directly, but a neat little graphic about teaching kids responsibility and knowing when to let go. It was vague enough to deny, but pointed enough that the internet started drawing its own conclusions. Riley stared at it for a long time, a hollow ache spreading in her chest. It felt like a warning shot, a public framing of their private fracture. At Maya's, she kept herself busy, washing dishes, scrolling TikTok, half-heartedly editing a vlog. But every time her reflection caught in the laptop screen, she saw the same truth staring back at her. She wasn't here for a sleepover. She was here because her mother told her to leave. Late that night, when the rest of the house was wrapped in silence, Riley finally let go. The tears came in jagged bursts, muffled beneath the blanket she pulled over her head. It wasn't just the sting of being told to leave, it was the hollow ache of realizing she might not belong anywhere. Her phone lay inches away, screen dark. She thought about calling her mom, not to argue, not even to talk about what happened, just to hear her voice, to tether herself back to something familiar. But pride was a stubborn thing, and fear had its own quiet grip. Instead, she stared into the black glass until her own reflection blurred, replaying the moment she walked out as if she could rewind it. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't the final chapter between them. But in this moment, with the miles stretching far beyond their true distance, it felt like they lived in different worlds. By the third day, the whispers had become noise. Loud, relentless noise. Blogs, gossip sites, entertainment headlines, each one more dramatic than the last. Trouble in the Burruss household. Did Kandi really kick out Riley? Fans concerned about the reality star's daughter. Some articles dug through reality TV archives, plucking out old moments where Kandi and Riley had disagreed, replaying them as evidence that this had been inevitable. Riley read them with a strange detachment, as though they were talking about a character she'd once played. Online, strangers dissected her life like it was scripted content. Comments split into two camps, those defending her as a teenager who deserved patience, and those insisting she was spoiled and in need of a reality check. The words blurred together, cruel and kind alike, until they all felt heavy. She didn't answer anyone. Not yet. But she could feel the pressure building. The internet didn't let silence last long. Meanwhile, her mother was speaking in the kind of language that said everything and nothing. Instagram captions about tough love, boundaries, and raising strong adults. A radio interview where she smiled and told the host, every parent has their own way of preparing their kids for life, before pivoting to another topic. That avoidance burned in a different way, colder, more cutting than the fight itself. It felt like their relationship had been folded into a PR strategy. That night, Riley broke her silence. Not with an explanation. Not with a plea. She opened Instagram, chose a black and white selfie she'd taken days before all this, and typed, "Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who teach you to protect yourself." No names. No details. Just enough for the internet to chew on. Within minutes, it was everywhere, likes ticking up by the hundreds, comments flooding in, screenshots bouncing across Twitter. Some read it as a cry for help, others as a declaration of strength. Riley didn't respond. She set her phone face down, letting the storm swirl without her. In the quiet that followed, she sat by the guest room window, the glow of streetlights spilling across her lap. Her thoughts drifted to a different version of her mother, the one who used to braid her hair before school, who clapped the loudest at every recital, who made hot chocolate on rainy afternoons. That woman felt far away now, buried under pride and sharp words neither of them had softened. She wondered if her mom was awake too, pacing the big, quiet house, replaying the argument in her own head. Riley didn't know if they would talk in a week, or a month, or longer. She didn't know if this was just a painful chapter or the start of something they wouldn't know how to undo. But as she pulled the blanket tighter and leaned her forehead against the cool glass, one truth stayed steady. They were still mother and daughter, no matter how far apart they stood. And right now, they were on opposite ends of a bridge only one of them could choose to cross first.